What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of OC and TJ. It's your boy, OC, back with another picks episode. We're heading into week 14. Shocking. 4 weeks left to go in the regular season, but playoffs are around the corner. Teams have already clinched their spots. Others are hoping to make it in. And then there are a few that were eliminated from contention. So we're going to talk about all of that and more. But for now, let's talk about Thursday night's matchup in about, 6 hours and 15 minutes? Or actually, no, 6.5 hours if you really want to be realistic. But the point is, it's going to take place at Ford Field. Excuse me. It's going to take place in Ford Field between the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions. It's the second meeting between these two teams. And if you remember the last time, Detroit won in Lambeau Field 24-14. This time, the Packers are hoping to split the series. Green Bay is coming off a very impressive victory on Thanksgiving night. Actually, both of these teams are coming off great Thanksgiving wins. The Packers just beat the Miami Dolphins 30-17. Their defense sacked Tua Tagovailoa 5 times. They were up 24-3 at halftime. They ran the ball extremely well, and after forcing a quick 3-and-out, or after their offense went 3-and-out, Malik Washington for the Dolphins, he muffs the punt. That swings the entire momentum of the game. And Green Bay just simply never took their foot off the gas. Tua threw for a lot of yards. He threw a couple touchdown passes, but didn't really have any effect on the game. And we all knew that it was going to be a must-win game for both of these teams. It was in the freezing cold. It was on Thanksgiving night. It was going to be 27 degrees. The Dolphins had a lot of narratives that they needed to crush on their own, not just for the fact that they couldn't win in freezing weather, but the fact that, for the fact that they just couldn't beat anybody that was on their level or that has a winning record. I know the Rams are technically in that conversation right now, but in situations like this where you needed a way to keep your playoff hopes alive, the Dolphins just completely laid an egg when you knew that they couldn't afford to. But the Lions, on the other hand, they are coming off a more bizarre finish over the Chicago Bears. They scored on 5 of their first 6 drives to take a commanding 23-7 lead, and it easily could have been 6 straight drives if it weren't for a lost fumble by Jameis Winston inside the 5-yard line. Detroit's defense played absolutely incredible in the first half. If I look at my notes right here, they gave up just 2 first downs. Caleb Williams went 5 of 15 for 34 yards, and they only managed 53 total yards of offense. But in the second half, Chicago finally woke up. In the fourth quarter, they led 2 straight touchdown drives, actually, let me rephrase that. On 4 drives in the fourth quarter, they scored touchdowns on 2 of them to make it a 3-point game. And after Detroit, scored a touchdown on their first possession of the third quarter, they punted the ball. Jake Bates then missed a 45-yard field goal, and then they missed another punt. And all of a sudden, it felt like they were doing everything they could to try to hand the game over to the Chicago Bears. But the Bears got the ball back with about a few minutes left, and they were able to get in Detroit in the field goal range. But Caleb Williams took a few unnecessary sacks, and all of a sudden, it's 3rd and 26 at the 40-yard line when you had it 1st and 10 at the 25-yard line at one point because of a pass interference penalty by Kendall Vildor. And Matt Eberflus sealed his fate as the head coach of the Chicago Bears with this costly blunder. So after Caleb Williams took his 5th sack of the game from Zadarius Smith to force 3rd and 26, Matt Eberflus decides to not use the one timeout that he had in his back pocket, and he decided to run the clock all the way down to 6 seconds. And Caleb Williams took the snap and just launched an incomplete pass in a tight coverage. And for about 10 to 15 seconds, we were all just putting our hands over our eyes or over our heads, just thinking, what in God's green one just freaking happened? Even the freaking Detroit Lions were stunned as to how they just barely escaped with a victory, because Matt Eberflus could have used the one timeout that he had to pick up another 10 or 15 yards to get right back in a field goal range. And instead, you let the clock run all the way down to 6 seconds and not get anything out of it. And the audacity that he had to try to defend himself at the end of the game was just flat out horrendous. And I'm going to get into more of what happened later on in just a little bit. But listen, Detroit, they had so many chances to finally close the deal, and it took a freaking coaching blunder from them to win their 10th straight game of the season. I'll give them credit for doing a lot early on. Again, 5 out of 6 scoring drives. You were up 23-7, but there were a lot of points that you left off the board that gave Chicago a lot of breathing room. And by the time they finally woke up and you stalled out, there was a realistic chance that the Bears could come back and pull off this upset. And now, heading into this Thursday night game against the Packers, I think their luck might run out, and they're going to have to lose the game at some point. I am going to pick the Packers to win this game, and it's not really because I think that the Lions' luck will run out per se, even though, they did kind of they were a little bit fortunate on Sunday, but their defense is incredibly injured right now. You still don't have Aiden Hutchinson. You're without 2 of your starting linebackers. You have a lot of other depth options that are going to be on injured reserve. And you're going up against the Packers offense that runs the ball extremely well, when the conditions are in their favor. They got a lot of speed, including Christian Watson and Jaden Reed. Even though they won't have Romeo Doubs or Jair Alexander, they've had enough games to where when those guys are out, they'll do just enough to hang on and for them to pull off a resounding victory, whether it's a 20-point blowout or whether it's a 3-point tight finish. So I think that Jordan Love is going to have an awesome game. I think that, Jared Goff will do his best to try to keep up. But if you remember the last time that these two teams played each other in Ford Field, it was on Thanksgiving. And instead of Jared Goff and Aiden Hutchinson giving their fans the best Thanksgiving possible, Jordan Love and Rashawn Gary completely spoiled it. And Rosen showed to, turn their season around, to turn the Packers season around. So I think it'll be a really close game. I'm expecting a lot of fireworks from both offenses, but I think that if Jordan Love gets the ball in his hands last, then I would just hold on tight because he is that kid is special, and I think that the Lions defense they're going to have their troubles with him and Josh Jacobs because he has had an outstanding season. But I'll say that the Packers will win this game 30-27, but if the Lions do win and somehow pull this off, they will clinch a playoff berth, which I think we all expected at the beginning of the year, but a win right here would pretty much seal the fate. And if they don't, there are about 9 different scenarios in which they could clinch a spot, but they need some teams to lose and even a couple to tie. So we'll see what happens there. But, I think that for the Packers to win this game, they can attack their defense in a lot of different ways. And more importantly, if they can just get a couple of stops against Jared Goff, if they can force at least one turnover to swing the momentum around, then I think it will be enough. And I'm sorry that I'm sounding so raspy and shaky. I'm dealing with a very shitty cold. So I'm trying to work through it. But you know what? Job's not finished, and the grind does not stop. So let's move on to Sunday's festivities between the New Orleans Saints and the New York Giants. This is going to be a really boring game. I'm going to pick the Saints to win this game. I'm not going to break too much of what happened between these two teams last week, but I will anyways. The Saints, they lost 21-14 to the Rams. They held a 6-0 lead at halftime, but they relied on 3 field goal attempts from Blake Grupe, and 2 of them were able to go through the uprights. In the second half, their defense got torched on 3 touchdowns on 4 possessions in the whole second half. And by the time their offense woke up, it was, they had plenty of chances to, send the game into overtime and even to push their lead even further. They tied the game up at 14, but after the defense gave up the touchdown to give the Rams the lead, on 4th and 3 at the 8-yard line, Derek Carr got strip sacked by Jared First, and the Rams were able to take over on downs and barely escape with a road victory. So really, I just saw a lot of missed opportunities from the Saints. I get that Taysom Hill got injured in the 4th quarter and is out for the season, which is just a devastating blow. But, 2 field goals in the first half, and by the time the Rams took the lead, your offense finally decides to wake up. And when you had a chance to extend the game and continue it even further, you fall flat and you blow the opportunity that you have to, potentially give yourselves a victory. I think they were anyways, because I think the Rams just have a lot more talent on both sides of the ball. But yeah, that was That was a stinger, and it might have sealed their fate. They're not officially eliminated for playoff contention, but one loss could very well do it. The Giants, I mean, what else is there to say about them? I mean, Drew Lock got sacked 6 times. They actually got off to a very promising start early on. I mean, they scored a touchdown on their opening drive. Their defense forced 2 field goals on Dallas's first 2 possessions. But then the minute that Drew Lock threw the pick 6 to DeMarvion Overshown on the second drive of the game, I think half of America just turned off their television screens and either scrambled for the last piece of pumpkin pie or decided to take a nap and wait for the next Sunday night game or the Thursday night game, because we all knew that the Cowboys were just going to win a very boring, very pedestrian game. Cooper Rush didn't do that. He wasn't like completely great. I mean, he threw for 195 yards on 21 completions. So it was really a lot of dinking and dunking. There were a lot of missed throws, but you know what? He threw a touchdown pass to start the third quarter, and more importantly, Rico Dowdle had a pretty solid game. He ran for over 110 yards on 22 carries. And even though it was against the freaking Giants, they at least showed they had a little more discipline. I mean, the Giants committed 13 penalties. The only other touchdown that they scored after their opening possession was in garbage time when it was too little too late. And now they're going to be without both Theo Johnson and Dexter Lawrence out for the rest of the season. And now they've lost 7 straight. Brian Daboll, if he gets fired, it's going to be the 6th time they'll clean house in the last 9 seasons. And these last 2 losses have proven that Daniel Jones was clearly not the biggest problem. He obviously wasn't the solution, but the O-line is incredibly injured. The defense has been an absolute disaster. Malik Neighbors and Tyrone Tracy are really the only 2 impactful players that their offense has. Both their backup quarterbacks have been absolutely atrocious, and they pretty much just given up. They've lost all interest. They've lost their heart. They've lost their mojo. They've lost their desire. And I'm sure that everybody is just waiting for this season to be over because, I mean, if it weren't for the freaking New York Jets, the Giants would be, the most inept organization in all of football right now. And that's saying a lot because it's been almost 15 years since they last won since they last won a Super Bowl. So I'm picking the Saints to win. I think it's going to be a blowout, 30-10. Even without Taysom Hill, I think, you know what, Alvin Kamara is going to have a pretty solid day against an injury-riddled and very weak Giants defense. I think as long as Derek Carr doesn't turn the ball over, their offense will be fine. And more importantly, it's just, do I really expect that Drew Lock is going to have a field party against this New Orleans Saints defense? I know that it's been horrible all season long and that it's regressed over the last few seasons, but if the Dallas Cowboys can keep them in check and sack Drew Lock 6 times when it's had its struggles over the course of the season, then I don't expect the Saints to play any differently. So that's why I think it's going to be as big of a blowout as it is right now. Next up, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Cleveland Browns. It's the second meeting between these 2 teams in the last 3 weeks, and this time it will be in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The Steelers are coming off a thrilling victory over the Cincinnati Bengals, 44-38. If we're being honest, I think the only reason why the score was as close as it was because the Bengals tried to keep up it late in the second half, even though they were down by double digits for most of the afternoon. And every time that the Steelers touched the football, they could not be stopped. I mean, after Russell Wilson threw a pick 6 to Cam Taylor-Britt on the opening drive, in which it wasn't even his fault, the receiver slipped, and the defender could have easily been flagged for pass interference on the play, which I don't know why a flag wasn't thrown. But after that turnover, they only punted the ball one more time, and they didn't turn it over for the rest of the afternoon. Russell Wilson was phenomenal. He threw for over 400 yards and 3 touchdown passes. I mean, he threw the ball to 10 to 11 different receivers. Let me pull out the rest of my notes right here because I got it right here. They had 520 yards of offense. And like I said, every time that they touched the football after that pick 6, they could not be stopped. And more importantly, their defense made the 3 game-changing plays that swung the entire momentum around. They had their problems with Joe Burrow. He threw for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, but he also turned the ball over 3 times. He threw an interception in which it was both deflected by Cam Hayward and dropped by T. Higgins. And he lost 2 fumbles, one from TJ Watt and another by Nick Herbig that was recovered by Peyton Wilson for a touchdown. And one could argue that those 7 points that the Steelers scored on that defensive touchdown were the 7 points that they needed to win that football game and for them to carry themselves over the top. I know that one could argue that the pick 6 by Cam Taylor-Britt, if you wipe that out, that the score would have been a lot worse. But yeah, it's just another typical 2024 Bengals loss, but it's also another typical Steelers victory because even when they have a chance to finally pull away and have a relaxing victory, they make the game a lot closer than what it should have been. But the Cleveland Browns, they are in the same boat as Cincinnati because Jameis Winston on Monday Night Football against the Denver Broncos threw for 500 yards or close to 500 yards and 4 touchdown passes. Jerry Jeudy torched his former team, with 235 receiving yards on just 9 catches. Elijah Moore was able to reach the 100-yard mark, and they were actually 2 minutes away from realistically pulling off an upset because Cleveland got into field goal range. But what cost them? 2 pick sixes by Jameis Winston. One from Nick Menino near the end of the first half, and another that got snagged by Jaquan McMillan to ice the game. And then there was another interception from Cody Barton on a late desperation drive, and that cemented a 3-interception night when Jameis Winston had 6 touchdowns, 2 of them to the other team. So Cleveland is really coming off a very heartbreaking loss because if they didn't turn the ball over, they would have pulled off the upset against Denver because the Broncos offense, I don't know what in the world their strategy was when they're just chucking it deep on almost every single passing play. But Bo Nix completed just 51% of his passes. He threw 2 interceptions, and they scored 27 points, which is a respectable number, but 14 of them were from their defense. So even though they had their problems with Jameis Winston, they were one of the biggest reasons why Denver was able to survive at home and stay in the playoff race. So heading into this game between Pittsburgh and Cleveland, I think the Steelers are going to win this one. I don't think they're going to get swept by Cleveland. They haven't lost a regular season game at home to Cleveland since 2003. And I think that the Steelers are going to be seething for revenge here. They know what they messed up on the last 2 weeks. They need to make sure that they come out with a more aggressive mindset and that they actually minimize their mistakes on both sides of the football. And they got to make sure that they can force a couple of takeaways from Jameis Winston the same way that Denver did 2 weeks ago. Because if they play like they did last week, then they'll be fine. Obviously, they gave up a lot of yards and points to Joe Burrow. But if they can force the 2 turnovers that they did last week, then that'll be enough for them to pull away by at least 7 or 10 points. So I think the Steelers are going to win this game 24-17. And I'm expecting both teams to play with a lot of fight, but again, I just don't see the Steelers getting swept by the Cleveland Browns twice this year. I'll be pleasantly surprised if they do, but it's just, I'm sure that Mike Tomlin is going to let them know that we are not losing to these guys for the second time in 3 weeks, or else we have a lot of problem solving to do. So, moving on, we got the Minnesota Vikings versus the Atlanta Falcons. If the Vikings win and the Cardinals and Rams lose, then they clinch a playoff berth. And there are also a few other scenarios in which they could clinch a playoff berth. But one victory from the Vikings could inch them closer to officially landing a spot. But they got to welcome a familiar friend in Kirk Cousins, who was the biggest reason why the Falcons lost to the Chargers on Sunday. I mean, that was an absolute travesty from Kirk Cousins. In the game that I just watched. I mean, let this sink in. The Chargers scored 3 field goals in the first half, and that was the only time the offense got points on the board. In the second half alone, they picked up just 2 first downs and 32 yards of offense. Justin Herbert completed just 5 of 8 passes for 32 yards, and not once did they even cross midfield. And Justin Herbert got sacked 5 times. Like, that Falcons defense was doing everything possible to try to win the game. The Chargers offense had no movement whatsoever. The only receiver that had any type of an impact was Ladd McConkey before he unfortunately got hurt. But the reason why the Falcons lost was because Kirk Cousins decided to one-up that travesty by having a trash performance of himself with 4 interceptions and one of them a pick 6, which was the only time that the Chargers scored a touchdown. Now the Falcons have lost 3 in a row. They're tied for the division lead with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers after outplaying them twice this season. And it's just like we're repeating the same story over and over again. The Falcons have tremendous promise. They get off to a really incredible start. And then, boom, they choke it away. It's not like I've seen that movie before once or twice, especially at big-time playoff games or even Super Bowls. So I am not blaming Atlanta's defense at all for them losing this game. They did everything possible. They took Justin Herbert down 5 times. They shut him down on almost every single conceivable angle. They had no business running the football. And like I said, they didn't even reach midfield in the whole second half. And they relied on 3 field goals to score their first 9 points of the game. And it took a pick 6 for them to score their only touchdown. Just think about that. And more importantly, the only reason why Atlanta even scored a touchdown in their game was because Hassan Haskins fumbled the football at his own 30-yard line. So if Kirk Cousins did not turn the freaking ball over, they would have found a way to win that football game. And now you're going on the road against the Minnesota Vikings, who have one of the best scoring defenses in the league and one of the most efficient offenses in football. I know that they've been treading through a lot of rough waters over the last 5 weeks, but they won 5 in a row. They've won 10 games. And like I said, one more victory could inch them closer to a playoff spot. So I think the Vikings are going to win. I think they're the more complete team. But if Kirk Cousins does not play at his absolute best, they're going to be below 500, and Tampa is going to jump right in front of them for the division lead. And who knows if the Falcons are going to recover from that. So I say the Falcons will win this game 24-10. And I don't expect it to be pretty, but I expect them to do just enough. So, speaking of Tampa Bay, let's talk about this game between them and the Las Vegas Raiders at Raymond James Stadium. The Bucs are coming off an overtime victory, 26-23 to the Carolina Panthers. That was definitely one of the sloppiest games that I've ever seen from Tampa Bay this season. The fact that they even won this game was pretty shocking because it looked like the Panthers had total command of this victory. I mean, Baker Mayfield got sacked 4 times and threw 2 interceptions. Their defense gave up close to 300 yards and 2 touchdowns to Bryce Young. And after Adam Thielen made a ridiculous one-handed catch to get into field goal range in overtime, I thought it was going to be game over. But just like on the final drive of regulation, when Adam Thielen scored a touchdown with 30 seconds left, Carolina just simply fell apart. And they cost themselves a winnable game. With 30 seconds left, the defense let Tampa Bay march into field goal range to send the game into overtime. And then when the offense got the ball back, Chuba Hubbard fumbled it away. And their defense gave up a 38-yard run to Rachaad White to set up a walk-off game-winning field goal. So if it wasn't for Rachaad White or even Bucky Irving for that matter, Tampa's offense would not have had any chance of staying alive in this game. I know that Mike Evans had close to 120 yards, but Rachaad White, he finished the game with 76 yards on just 11 touches. But Bucky Irving, the rookie out of Oregon, who is on pace to being a superstar in this league, ran the ball for 152 yards on 25 touches. That's 220 yards from Tampa Bay, or close to that amount, if I should say. And Baker Mayfield was the furthest reason why they won. Like I said, 4 sacks, 2 picks. They were 2 for 12 on third down, 2 for 5 in the red zone. And yet it took a phenomenal performance from their 2 running backs and a lost fumble by Chuba Hubbard for them to barely escape. So Todd Bowles should be on his hands and knees thanking the Lord that they barely escaped with this win. Because if this was against any other team other than the 3-win Panthers, they are losing that game by 20. And who knows? Maybe the Raiders could pull off an upset game. They barely beat the Chiefs on Black Friday. But just like the Carolina Panthers, a lost fumble all but sealed the deal. This time, it was on a botched snap by Jackson Powers-Johnson. And Aiden O'Connell wasn't even ready for it. And to top it all off, there was an illegal shift penalty that would have that just rubbed even more salt into the wound. To put it in a better phrase. I get that Daniel Carlson missed 3 field goals that could have been huge points for the Las Vegas Raiders. But if you look at the rest of this game, the Raiders in the second half did everything possible to try to win this football game. And the Chiefs just simply, once again, let their opponent hang around for way too long. Aiden O'Connell threw for over 300 yards and 2 touchdown passes, won a 33-yard strike to Brock Bowers, and then a 75-yard bomb down the sideline to Trey Tucker to give them the lead. Patrick Mahomes in the second half completed just 11 of 22 passes for 114 yards with no touchdown scored, and he also got sacked 5 times. I get that he threw a beautiful touchdown pass in the corner of the end zone to Justin Watson near the end of the first half, so I'll give him credit there. But like many other games this year, Kansas City just said, here, take it. We don't really want to win this game. And then the Raiders, not really learning their lesson from some other opponents that lost to the Chiefs this year, didn't realize, oh, wait, if we just don't screw up, we're going to be fine. And then that botch stat happens, and it's like, good God, they can't keep getting away with it. So the Raiders are coming off their 8th straight victory. They're officially eliminated from playoff contention, but the Tampa Bay Buccaneers still have a shot because the Falcons are just completely falling apart at the seams. So I'm picking the Bucs to win. They're at home. I know that Baker Mayfield is dealing with a couple of injuries, and he's really banged up, but listen, I think their offense has a lot more firepower. I hope to God that their defense doesn't let Brock Bowers torch them the entire game because he's been absolutely phenomenal this year. But I expect their offense to do just enough. I don't really think Aiden O'Connell is going to outgun Baker Mayfield in a must-win matchup for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But at the same time, the Raiders are playing like they have nothing to lose. And just like Antonio Pierce said last week, it's like, hey, we got the best team versus the worst team, so let's try to crush that narrative. I'm paraphrasing it because I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but it's somewhere around the block. But I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will be fine, but I think they'll win by double digits. Let's say they win 27-13. Okie dokie. Now we go to the Eagles versus the Carolina Panthers. Baltimore, or actually, let me rephrase that. The Philadelphia Eagles just won their 8th straight game, and they did something that I didn't think was going to be possible. They beat Lamar Jackson at Lamar Jackson. I mean, they got off to a slow start. They were down 9-0 early on, but then they were able to go on a 14-3 run at the end of the first half to take a 2-point lead. And then when the third quarter began, Justin Tucker, the most accurate kicker in football, a future Hall of Famer, missed 2 long field goals to give more and more momentum to the Philadelphia Eagles, whose offense punted the ball on their first 2 drives of the period. And when the Ravens punted the ball on their third possession, Saquon Barkley said, all right, we gave you plenty of chances to take the lead, but here I go. And he takes it to the house from 25 yards away, and it was essentially the dagger because that touchdown put them up 21-12. The Ravens turned the ball over on downs. Jake Elliott made a field goal to make it a 12-point game. And then the Ravens finally reached the end zone, but with 3 seconds left on the clock. So Philadelphia's defense played well. They made the Ravens offense look completely one-dimensional. Saquon Barkley once again led the Eagles offense to victory. Obviously, their passing game has not been in complete sync because Devontae Smith has been out, and you haven't really been able to have that fluidity and consistency that you've had all season long or even in the last 2 years. But now that Devontae Smith was a full participant in practice, I think that their offense is going to be close to 100%. I won't say all the way there, but the more that Smith works his way back up to game speed, I think things will be fine on that front because Saquon Barkley has been on a tear this year, and their defense is the best in all of football. And you're going up against the Carolina Panthers that nearly had 2 upset victories against the Chiefs and the Buccaneers, but they came up short and lost in heartbreaking fashion. So I think the Eagles, I don't think they're going to make it as close as Kansas City did or as Tampa Bay did. I think they're a more complete football team, which is saying a lot because Nick Sirianni is their head coach. But I don't expect this to be too much of a game. I'm hoping that it is personally because, listen, I love the chaos. But I think the Eagles will handle their business. They're at home. And if they do win and have a couple other things go their way, they could clinch a playoff spot. So I'll say the Eagles win 34-13. Whew. Like I said, I'm sorry that I'm coughing a lot and that I'm sounding so freaking nasally and scratchy, but you know what? I promised myself I'd do this, and I'm not stopping now. And you know what? Let's see how many games we have left so you don't have to hear this anymore. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, we're going to get through these as quickly as possible. Let's go to the Titans versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Why in the good world did I think the Tennessee was going to pull off the upset against Washington? I mean, I figured, okay, the Commanders lost 3 straight. It's going to be another Cliff Kingsbury and Dan Quinn joke job. And then the Tennessee Titans just pulled off a road upset against the Houston Texans, who are just as shaky. So I figured, you know what? Maybe history could repeat itself. But it didn't. It was 28-0 before you knew it. Then the Titans lost 2 fumbles, one on the offense, one on the special teams. And at the end of the game, it was 42-19. So Freezing Cold Takes is going to have a fun time trying to find, any ridiculous hot take that I said about the Tennessee Titans last week. Yeah, that was just horrible to watch. The Titans were once again incredibly undisciplined. 11 penalties in the first half, 12 overall. Their defense gave up 4 touchdowns to Jaden Daniels, 3 through the air and 1 on the ground, 267 rushing yards, a 40-yard score by Brian Robinson to start the game. I mean, nothing went right for them. Their special teams was once again a disaster. The offense didn't show up until it was way too late. Their only points and yards came in literal garbage time. And, I mean, this season has just been an absolute disaster for them. I didn't think they were going to make the playoffs anyways, but with all the moves that they made this offseason, trading for L'Jarius Sneed, trading for Ernest Jones, signing Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs, signing Calvin Ridley to a huge contract, getting Tony Pollard from the Dallas Cowboys, hiring Brian Callahan as your head coach, drafting J.C. Latham in the first round, a year after you took Pete Skoronski. Like, this was supposed to be the year for them to show that, okay, things are getting a little bit better, but it has been god-awful. And it's an everything issue. The defense has completely regressed as the season has gone on. Will Levis has played a little better. He's not a huge joke, but he's clearly not been the solution. And now you're wondering if Brian Callahan is going to last longer than 1 year. I'm hoping to God that he does, because I hate when coaches are gone after one season, but it's been very clear that he's been outmatched and overwhelmed in every single game that he's been a part of this year. The only 3 wins that he's had this season are against, if I remember correctly, Houston, which was a quality win. I'll give him that. But then you had the New England Patriots, who are 3-10 and are just as awful and just as pathetic. And then the Miami Dolphins, who didn't have Tua and are now 5-7 and could potentially be out of the playoff picture with a couple more losses. So, I mean, the Washington was just a better football team, but I think that their season has gone a little better than Jacksonville's, but that's not really saying much. Jaguars are coming off a 23-20 loss against the Houston Texans, but the most important thing to take away from this was that Trevor Lawrence in the second quarter took an egregious helmet-to-helmet hit from Texas linebacker Azeez Al-Shire. He was knocked out of the game because of a concussion. He was just placed on injured reserve as a result of the hit, and now he is most likely going to be out for the rest of the season. Mac Jones is going to be taking over. I am just hoping that, Trevor Lawrence is healthy and that he's okay, because I hate seeing players take hits like that, whether you're a quarterback or a wide receiver or a linebacker, because I know the type of toll it could take on you mentally and physically, and the people around you, because they're your support system and you want to make sure that you're not letting them down, and vice versa. So all prayers go to Trevor Lawrence. I'm really hoping to God that he's all right. He says that he's in the best of spirits, so I'm just hoping that he gets better with each and every day. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that even if he still played, even if he didn't get hurt, I don't think it was going to really change the outcome, because he only completed 4 of 10 passes with an interception to Derek Staley Jr. Mac Jones did his best to try to make it a close game. I mean, they tied the game at 6 in the third quarter, but then Houston scored 17 unanswered points to take a 23-6 lead. And even though Jacksonville made it a 3-point game with a few minutes left, Joe Mixon picked up a couple first downs. Jaguars burned all 3 of their timeouts, and Houston was able to run the clock out. So I appreciated the effort, but it was too little too late. I think the Titans will win. It's not going to really mean anything for both teams because neither of them are going to make the playoffs. The only thing that's at stake is a very high draft pick, but the Titans right now, they have a little bit of a better roster, and at least with Will Levis, they've proven that they're capable of having decent performances this year. And when you have Mac Jones as your quarterback for the Jaguars, you know that he's going to make at least 1 or 2 mistakes that are going to completely derail their chances. So it's going to be a really boring game, but I think the Titans will do enough to pull away. I'll say they win 20-10, but let's just move on. All right, we got the Dolphins versus the Jets in Miami. Oh, God, Miami, why do you keep doing this to yourselves each and every single year? They're 5-7. Their loss against the Green Bay Packers was one that they could not afford if they wanted to keep their playoff hopes alive. They had a chance to crush the narrative that they could not beat teams with a winning record or that they couldn't win in the cold, but they decided to validate the media's criticisms and lay a complete egg in Lambeau Field. Tua got sacked 5 times. They were down 24-3 at halftime. They were down 27-3 in the third quarter, and most of their points and yards that they totaled were in literal garbage time when it was too little too late to have any chance of coming back. Josh Jacobs had over 100 yards from scrimmage. Jordan Love, he had an efficient day with just 7 incompletions. 271 yards, 2 touchdowns, but no interceptions and no sacks from Miami's defense. Like, they showed no resistance whatsoever. And the minute that Malik Washington muffed the punt, I literally said to myself, oh, God, here we go again. Another disaster. And right on schedule, the Dolphins, not learning anything from their shortcomings, look like little kids not knowing how to play in the cold. I mean, when you're seeing reports that Mike McDaniel was trying to stand by the heater for 20 to 25 minutes, then that is a damning report, because it just shows that there is little to no leadership. There's no accountability. They're not evolving. They're not adapting to the adversities that they face. And this is exactly the reason why I didn't have them making the playoffs this year. Because unless they actually prove to us that things were truly going to be different, all they were going to be was a wild contender at best, and then an overrated, fraudulent pretender at its worst. Plain and simple. But at least they're doing better than the Jets. Because after holding a 21-7 lead against the Seattle Seahawks, in which their special teams recovered 2 fumbles on 2 kickoffs, and then took a 99-yard return to the house with Kene Nwangwu, Leonard Williams, the former New York Jets defensive lineman, intercepted a pass and ran it all the way down the sideline for a 92-yard touchdown. And after Breece Hall lost the fumble in the middle of the third quarter, the Jets offense completely shut down. The Seahawks relied on 2 field goals to stay within striking distance. And the more that the Jets offense stalled out, we knew it was just going to be a matter of time before Geno Smith got his vengeance against his former team. But the thing was, he had a little help along the way on his final drive of the game. Now, he had more than 11 minutes, so it was way more than enough time. But the Jets defense got flagged 4 times on the final drive. Let me say that again. 4 times. 4th and 6, too many men on the field. 4th and 1, pass interference. 3rd and 6, horse collar tackle. Another 3rd and 6, offsides. And then on 3rd and 1 at the 8-yard line, the Jets defense completely collapsed by giving up a touchdown run to Zach Charbonnet from 8 yards away. So 4 penalties. You have pass interference, horse collar tackle, offsides, and I think another offsides. Yeah, 2 offsides, a pass interference, and a horse collar tackle. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes. I can barely read my handwriting. You know what I mean. So Aaron Rodgers got the ball back with 5 minutes left, so he had more than enough time to try to salvage some dignity. And then just like he did against the Colts, he took 2 costly sacks from Leonard Williams, and then on 4th down, he overthrew Garrett Williams in a tight coverage, and the pass fell incomplete. Actually, the play before the pick six to Leonard Williams, he missed a wide-open touchdown to Garrett Wilson. So just imagine how different things could have been if the Jets were up 24-7, or at best 28-7. Seattle would have had no chance of coming back because their offense was pedestrian. They only scored 2 touchdowns on 11 drives. Their special teams was an absolute disgrace. 2 fumbles, a kickoff return touchdown allowed. And then a blocked extra point. This should have been an easy blowout for the Jets, especially with Aaron Rodgers. But no, they have to completely fall apart once again. They completely imploded and embarrassed themselves in front of the MetLife crowd once again. And now they're 3-9. And the only thing that Jets fans have anything close to looking forward to is the new Netflix documentary about Aaron Rodgers. But I don't even think they're going to care enough about that to just watch it out of the blue, because they know that this season has just been an utter train wreck for them. I think that the Dolphins are going to win. They're at home. Tua hasn't lost to the Jets in his career, which is absolutely surprising considering that, he's had a dominant streak against the Patriots. But many people forget that he's also undefeated against New York. So there's something to look forward to there. I think their offense is more consistent. And even though they don't do well against legitimate teams, they at least know how to handle their business against bottom feeders, with the exception of Tennessee. But like I said, no Tua. So I think the Dolphins will win 27-13. But if Aaron Rodgers decides to show up, then whoopee, you got 4 wins. Congratulations. What do you want? A freaking participation trophy? Great. Too little, too late. All right, next up, we got the Arizona Cardinals versus the Seattle Seahawks. The second matchup between these two teams in 3 weeks. So we know what happened the last time these two teams played against each other. The Cardinals offense got completely shut down. Kyler Murray didn't score a touchdown. He got sacked 5 times, and he threw a horrible pick six to Kobe Bryant that swung the whole momentum of the ball game around. And even though Geno Smith didn't have the best performance, as he got sacked 5 times and threw an interception, he did score the only offensive touchdown of the ball game, and it turned out to be more than enough. Because, like I said, Arizona's offense, with the exception of Trey McBride, completely imploded. So I already talked about Seattle. They barely escaped yet again because of their defense. But Arizona, they held a 19-6 lead against the Minnesota Vikings. I didn't even recap this game because I wanted to save it for this one. The Arizona Cardinals were up 19-6 in the middle of the third quarter. They relied on 12 of their 19 points from Chad Ryland with 4 made field goals, but their offense totaled 320 yards. Their defense sacked Sam Darnold 5 times and held him to just 2 field goals and 73 total yards of offense. And I figured, okay, all Arizona has to do is just come up with one more touchdown drive to put this away, and they're actually going to keep their season alive. They're going to be 7-5, and they might usurp Seattle for the division if they win this game. But the minute that Minnesota finally got on the board with a wide-open touchdown pass to Johnny Munn, Arizona once again collapsed. Because 4 plays later, Kyler Murray heaved a horrible interception off his back foot to his former teammate Byron Murphy Jr. Both teams traded field goals on their next 2 possessions. And then when Sam Darnold got the ball back one last time, he marched his team down the field with these and capped off a game-winning drive with a touchdown pass to Aaron Jones in the flat to go up 23-22. When Kyler Murray got the ball back, he got strip sacked by Jonathan Grenard on 2nd down, and then 2 plays later threw the game-ending interception to Shaq Griffin. And it just capped off a total and complete collapse. And one that might have derailed Arizona's playoff chances, because now they're not even the 8th seed in the NFC playoff picture right now. If they can beat Seattle, then their season is still going to stay alive. But one more loss could officially knock them out of the race for good. So they cannot afford to lose this game. They cannot lay an egg the way they did 2 weeks ago at Seattle. And more importantly, the Seahawks have to make sure that they play their best on all 3 phases, because there's no way in hell that they are getting away with the stuff that they got away with last week against the Arizona Cardinals. They're just not, because the Cardinals are more opportunistic. They know how to flip on the switch when they get that one quick takeaway or that one momentum swinging play, and Seattle's going to completely implode as a result because of that. Plain and simple. I think the Cardinals will win. I think at some point in time, the Cardinals are going to have to finally get a win against Seattle. I don't think they've done that in the last, 2 or 3 seasons. Last year, they got swept by them. 2 years ago, they got swept. So, yeah, it's been about a few seasons since that happened, since Arizona got a win. So, the Cardinals are going to be at home. We know that their offense has to play consistent through the entirety of the ball game. And more importantly, their defense has to pick up where they left off over the last 2 weeks. Because 10 sacks in 2 games and picking off Geno Smith to start the fourth quarter, that could work if their offense decides to not lay an egg like they did the last 2 weeks. So, I think the Cardinals will win. I think they'll bounce back on their feet. 27-24. It's going to be a really close ball game. But like I said, I am not going to be surprised if Seattle somehow escapes with another victory. And if they do, then they're going to pull away from the division as crazy as it sounds, which is freaking bizarre. But let's move on to the Buffalo Bills versus the Los Angeles Rams. The Bills were the first to lock up their division. They clinched the AFC East with a win over the San Francisco 49ers. It was snowy. The stadiums were covered in white snow, I should say. And the conditions were definitely bad. I don't think they took up the tarp off the field until 5:30 p.m. So it was definitely a winter wonderland. And the 49ers, from the start of the game to the end, were clearly not prepared for what was about to happen. Josh Allen scored 3 touchdowns, one of which he caught his own touchdown pass, where he threw a simple slant to Amari Cooper, and then the receiver lateraled it back to Allen, only for him to dive across the pylon to put the Bills up 28-3. Brock Purdy only threw for 94 yards. Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason suffered serious injuries that knocked him out of the ball game. They fumbled the football 2 more times on Sunday night, and the minute that James Cook exploded for a 65-yard touchdown on just the second drive of the game, I just knew that this game was going to get ugly really, really, really fast. I knew that the Bills were going to win this game handedly anyway, but it just felt like a total death blow to the 49ers Super Bowl hopes and their playoff hopes, because now they're 5-7. They're incredibly injured to hell on both sides of the ball. They're nowhere near as dominant or as explosive as they've been in the past. And now it's getting more and more imminent, or more and more clear, that a blow-up is imminent. And they're going to have to shuffle a lot of pieces and have to move off a lot of contracts just for them to, have any chance of having a future in the next few years. So, the Buffalo Bills, they were just a better team. They were 6 for 12 on third down, 4 for 4 in the red zone, only committed 5 penalties. They held the ball for 33 minutes. They ran the ball for 220 yards. I mean, they knew that it was not going to be a great day for them. They knew it was going to be snowy. It was going to be freezing, and that, they were going to have a hard time adjusting to the conditions. But they treated it like they were playing in a freaking dome, for crying out loud, because it did not faze or intimidate them one single bit. And the 49ers, they just simply quit. Plain and simple. So I think the Bills will handle their business on the road against Los Angeles. Like I said, they barely escaped with a 7-point victory over the New Orleans Saints. Their offense got shut out in the first half. They were able to do enough in the second half by scoring on 304 drives of that period. And the defense came up with the game-saving play by strip sacking Derek Carr on 4th and 3 on the last drive. But it really should not have come down to that. It just proved that if the Rams make the playoffs, they're going to be a first-round exit, because they can't beat anybody worth a damn, just like the Miami Dolphins. So I think the Bills' offense, they're going to have more success moving the football. I think their defense is going to come up with is going to have a few sacks and maybe come up with a couple of turnovers. And more importantly, the Rams are going to put up a fight. I hope it's a close ball game, but it's just, the Bills have bigger aspirations in mind, while the Rams are just simply hoping to get into the playoffs. So I'll say the Bills win this game 34-20. And moving on, we got one last game before we get into the primetime matchups. The 49ers versus the Chicago Bears. I'm not even going to break down what happened at the end of the Bears game, because I already did that. I mean, Caleb Williams takes a sack, 3rd and 26. You don't use a timeout. You let the clock run all the way down to 6 seconds, and you force Caleb Williams to chuck an incomplete pass into tight coverage when the clock expires. That got him fired. But what was really hilarious about the whole situation was that he got fired after addressing the media. Like, they can't even fire the head coaches right. And Thomas Brown not only is the interim head coach, but he's now had 2 promotions in just over 2 weeks. If that's not the most backwards organization in football, then I don't know who else can be. Maybe the Jets, maybe the Giants, even the Panthers, because they've definitely not been able to revive their season or been able to revive their franchise since losing the Super Bowl in 2016. But the Bears, they make the same mistakes over and over and over again. But the actual one thing that they did that they haven't done in franchise history was they actually fired a head coach in the middle of the season. I don't think they'd ever done that before. Not with Mike Ditka, not with Lovie Smith, not even with freaking Mark Trestman, which, by the way, was probably their worst head coach they've had in the last 20 years. I could be wrong, but you get the point. Oh, my God. I mean, listen, you put yourselves in a big hole early on in that game. You were down 23-7. It easily could have been a lot worse. Your offense finally woke up in the second half. And when you actually did have a chance to win the game, you blow it. Again. 3 weeks in a row. Blocked field goal against Green Bay. 3 and out in overtime. And then giving up the game-winning drive to Sam Darnold. And now this. Not even knowing or not even using a final timeout. And Eberflus doubling down saying, oh, I think it was the right decision. I think we handled that perfectly. Really? Really? So now they're going into this matchup against the 49ers in Santa Clara. I actually think the Bears can win because the 49ers are just dead and they're injured to hell on both sides of the ball. But I could very well be wrong. I mean, they've lost 6 straight now. They're 4-8. They've now fired their head coach and their offensive coordinator in just 4 weeks. And now they're cleaning, and now they're more likely going to clean house yet again, the same way that they did with Mitchell Trubisky, with Justin Fields, and now with Caleb Williams. 2 head coaches and offensive coordinators in the first 2 seasons with 3 straight starting quarterbacks. All drafted in the first round, mind you. Dear freaking God. I'll say the Bears win 23-20, but if the 49ers win, then I'll say the same score because both of their seasons are over at this point. So, all right, now we get to Sunday Night Football between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Los Angeles Chargers. If the Chiefs win, they clinch the AFC West, which is probably going to happen anyways, even if they do lose this game. Kansas City is coming off a victory in which it took a botched snap from them to barely beat the Raiders by 2 points, while the Chargers literally were carried by their defense to beat the Atlanta Falcons by 4 points. Justin Herbert got sacked 5 times. And I have the numbers right here. Their offense was horrible. 5 sacks taken from Justin Herbert. 3 field goals from Cameron Dicker in the first half. Those are the only points the offense scored the whole game. In the second half alone, they picked up 2 first downs, 32 yards of offense. They didn't reach midfield, but they still won because Kirk Cousins threw 4 interceptions, and one of them was a pick 6 to Tarheem Still. And the only reason why Atlanta scored a touchdown in the first place was because Hassan Haskins fumbled the football at the 30-yard line. So Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh, they should have thanked every single defensive player for bailing them out, and they sure as hell bailed them out of a horrible and ugly defeat to the Atlanta Falcons, because if the Chargers defense didn't play out of their minds the way they did on Sunday, there's no way in hell they are winning that football game. So they are coming off that victory. They're 8-4 now, if I'm not mistaken, and they have a chance to pull off an upset against the Chiefs at Arrowhead Stadium, but I think we know how this is going to go. The Chargers, they haven't really been able to do anything against legitimate talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball. The Chiefs, they're probably going to make this a closer game than what it should be, but they're going to rely on Patrick Mahomes or Deus Ex Machina to bail them out of it. I mean, right now, the way things are going, I could definitely see the Chiefs being one and done in the playoffs, because I've seen this movie before where teams have this big of a record, but they don't look great in a lot of their victories. I mean, if you look at the Chiefs' wins, it took a toe out of bounds for them to almost lose to Baltimore, a pass interference penalty from losing to Cincinnati, a blocked field goal from losing to Denver, a botched snap from losing to the Raiders. It took a walk-off field goal to beat the Carolina Panthers, and in their 2 double-digit victories of the season, they were only up by 3 in the fourth quarter. I mean, the offensive line has completely regressed. They've given up 10 sacks now in the last 2 games, and even more if you look at, the rest of the games they played this season. Their defense has looked vulnerable over the last few weeks. Patrick Mahomes hasn't been playing at his best, and I know that they're still dealing with a few key injuries, but, I mean, whoever they match up against in the playoffs, they're going to give the Chiefs a run for their money. And even if they do make it back to yet another conference championship game, I could see the Bills finally beating them and ending this freaking drought that they have over Kansas City in their playoff meetings. So I think the Chiefs will win. They're at home. I think they have the better quarterback. They have a more consistent offense. And I think that their defense will find a way to try to bounce back. But we all know how it's going to end, especially between these 2 quarterbacks. It's going to be a close game. Kansas City is going to pull off a remarkable game-winning drive at the end. And, the rest of America is going to be deflated because we didn't get an upset. So I'll say the Chiefs win 26-20 in overtime. And I'll see them winning the division yet again because God hates us all. All right, last but not least, we got Monday Night Football between the Dallas Cowboys and the Cincinnati Bengals. If the Bengals don't beat the Dallas Cowboys with Cooper Rush, then they are officially done. They're going to fall to 4-9. Their playoff hopes are going to be thrown out the window. Lou Anarumo might be fired. You don't know what's going to happen to Zach Taylor. And it would have just officially wasted one of the best season of Joe Burrow's career, because he's thrown 30 touchdown passes this year to just 5 interceptions. 21 of those touchdowns and 3 of those picks were at all 8 of their losses. And I know that he's turned the ball over at the most inopportune of times, which is a big reason why they've lost a few of their games, especially this one in Pittsburgh. But he essentially has to play perfect every single game for them to win, because their defense has been flat out horrible. And if they don't score and if they don't hold on to the football, the outcome of the game is decided. And when you're going up against the Cowboys defense that still has Micah Parsons and DeMarvion Overshown and Trayvon Diggs, who just sacked Drew Lock 6 times and came up with a crucial pick 6 that swung the whole momentum of the game, then, Cincinnati has to play perfect to win. I think the Bengals will hopefully bounce back. I don't see Cooper Rush, having a phenomenal performance. I could be wrong because, like I said, the Bengals defense has been horrible. But listen, Cincinnati, they're going to be incredibly desperate. The Cowboys fans are somehow deluded into thinking that they can still make the playoffs, even though they beat the freaking Giants, for crying out loud, and a Washington team that has been stumbling over the last few weeks. But to wrap this up quickly, I'm going to pick the Bengals 30-17. I like their offense better. I think Trey Hendrickson is going to set the tone early on. And if the Bengals turn the ball over, then we better hold on tight, because we know we're probably going to get another close and painful finish from this football team. We just are. But thank you all so much for watching. Thanks for those that stuck around. Make sure you like and subscribe for additional content. We'll be back with another episode. See you next time. Peace, everyone.